Welcome to this deep dive. Let's talk about something I think many of us run into. It's that feeling, being sort of stuck when you're staring at just too many possibilities. Thinking about, say, a career shift or maybe a creative thing or just life, figuring out the next step, that pause, that hesitation where you think, okay, where do I even start? It's really common, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Right. It is.
And what's really fascinating, I think, is how much our own perception, our own mind, plays into that feeling.
How so?
Well, it really boils down to how we organize the world visually and mentally. What grabs our attention, what becomes the clear figure in focus, and then what just kind of fades into the background.
Right, the background noise almost. And we're going to dig into this idea that sometimes the more you intensely search for the one thing, that specific purpose.
The more it slips away.
Exactly. Have
Okay.
you felt that? Like trying too hard makes it harder.
Definitely. It's almost like, trying to remember a specific word. You know how the harder you focus on finding it, the more it seems to just vanish?
Yeah.
That intense search can, ironically, hide what's actually right there, just waiting to be noticed.
So, okay, our goal here today is maybe to offer a slightly different angle on this whole uncertainty thing. Can we look at that hesitation, that stuck feeling, and see it not just as a roadblock, but maybe as an interesting launch pad?
Precisely. A starting point for creation, for discovery. It's about reframing how we understand that space of not knowing and what it might really be signaling to us.
Okay, let's start with an image then. Picture this. A dancer. She's in this huge, infinite white space. No walls, no floor, just endless white.
Okay.
And she wants to move, right? To express something, but she just pauses, hesitates. Why? What's going on there for you?
No, in a space like that, totally boundless, any movement she could possibly make feels just as good or just as valid as any other. Should she leap, turn, stay still? Without any natural structure, any reference point, there's no obvious reason to pick one over the others. And when there's no clear distinction,
Yeah.
well, all the options can start to feel weirdly meaningless.
That really connects with feeling swamped by choices in life, doesn't it? Like
Yeah.
looking at a restaurant menu with 500 items, it's actually harder to pick than if there were just 5 good options. Does that track?
It absolutely does. And from a psychological viewpoint, we could see this as a disruption in what's called the figure-ground relationship.
Figure ground, okay.
Yeah, it's basically how our minds naturally sort out perception. We instinctively pick out what stands out that's the figure from everything else that recedes into the background, which is the ground.
Okay, let's break that down with the dancer.
Yeah.
In her white space, what's the figure and what's the ground? How does that work or not work for her?
Well, initially there isn't really a clear figure. All the possible movements, all the potential actions, they just exist together in the vast ground of that white space. Nothing really grabs her attention as being more important.
Right.
And that lack of a standout figure can lead to a kind of, perceptual stagnation. It gets really hard to actually start doing something because nothing is pulling your focus strongly.
That makes total sense. Like everything and nothing matters all at once. Now, I know we looked into the story of an artist, Alex. He seems to really live this experience. Can you tell us about him? Does his situation help illustrate this?
Right, Alex. He's, by all accounts, incredibly talented. He explores all sorts of art forms, painting, sculpture, digital stuff.
Uh-huh.
But he finds it really hard to just commit, to stick with one thing. He'll start a project, super enthusiastic, but then the doubt starts creeping in. Is this really it? Is this the right path? Am I just wasting my time here? He's constantly second-guessing. Does that ring any bells?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It sounds like he's almost defeating himself before he even gets going, questioning the choice before it's had a chance to even become something. What's the dynamic underneath that?
Well, thinking in figure ground terms, Alex's creative world is just swamped with possibilities. That huge ground of potential artistic expressions is so big, so vast, that no single medium or style manages to really emerge and stay as a clear figure for him.
So he stays stuck in that hesitation.
Exactly, unable to fully commit. So for someone like Alex, it's not really about a lack of talent, it's almost the opposite. An overabundance of potential that creates this kind of paralysis. Have you seen that happen elsewhere?
Definitely, yeah. Having so many good ideas, you don't know which one to run with, so
Yep.
you don't run with any of them. It's weirdly counterintuitive.
It is, and this ties into something pretty fundamental about us humans. We naturally seek order. Our minds are sort of wired to look for closure, for patterns, for resolutions. It helps us make sense of a really complex world. I mean, perception is constantly trying to organize things, right?
So what happens then when we are faced with just too many options or there's no clear structure, how does the mind react?
It struggles. It really struggles to impose meaning. It's a bit like trying to find constellations in a completely starless night sky. Without those points of light to connect, your gaze just wanders. It doesn't settle anywhere. And similarly, when we have too many potential figures and no clear ground to set them against, our mind finds it really hard to latch onto a direction. Can you relate to that feeling, that sort of mental drift?
Oh, for sure. Lost in the possibilities. But let's circle back to our dancer in the void for a second. Her hesitation, her stillness. Is there another way to think about that initial pause?
Yeah, I think so. Beyond just seeing it as, a failure to act, we could also interpret it as a kind of heightened awareness. Maybe the dancer senses intuitively that her very first move isn't just going to change where she is physically. It's going to start defining who she is in that space. Every step, every gesture starts to create new boundaries, new meanings right there in the void.
Wow.
So her stillness might not just be fear. It could be this maybe unspoken recognition of how significant those first choices really are. Does that resonate with you?
That's a really powerful reframe. It suggests the hesitation could come from a place of profound responsibility, understanding that every choice, even in what looks like an empty space, actually carries weight.
Exactly. Each decision, even just deciding among possibilities, it changes the environment and our relationship to it, even if we don't know exactly how it will turn out. It's like acknowledging the weight of potential action. And this actually brings up another idea. Unfinished business. How might that play into this feeling of being stuck?
Unfinished business. What do I mean by that exactly?
Well, in this context, it means things like incomplete tasks, unresolved arguments, decisions we haven't quite made peace with. These things can sort of linger in our psychological background.
Okay.
And they subtly color how we see new opportunities. They become part of the ground, like this persistent hum that affects our focus right now. Have you ever felt that? The pull of old stuff when you're trying to move forward.
Definitely. Yeah. Like having too many tabs open in your brain, pulling your attention away from the main thing. How does that connect back to Alex, the artist?
Well, for Alex, every time he drops a project or jumps to a new medium without really resolving why he started the first one, those unfinished creative threads, they stay active in his psychological field. They fragment his attention, making it harder for a new figure, like a really committed direction, to truly emerge and hold its ground. It's kind of like having a bunch of unread emails nagging at you. They take up mental space even if you're ignoring them. And it's not just art, right? It could be anything left hanging. What sort of things come to mind for you?
Oh, yeah. Things unsaid, plans never acted on. They all feel like they add to this feeling of being weighed down. Which leads to a really interesting point. Is the whole idea of searching for the one right place, is that maybe flawed somehow?
It really can be, because it often assumes there's this perfect pre-existing spot just waiting for us to find it. And that puts enormous pressure on us, leads to constant doubt. How do you ever know for sure you found it? What if you just keep looking forever, never feeling like you've truly arrived? It sets up this almost impossible ideal, doesn't it? What do you think?
It does. It's like searching for one specific jigsaw piece that fits a pre-cut hole, instead of realizing that the picture itself changes as we put the pieces down.
Precisely. It reminds me of that image we discussed, the climber on the misty mountain.
Right.
From down below, the summit looks clear, like a fixed point. But as the climber goes up, the peak keeps seeming to recede, always shrouded in mist. So, is the problem the mountain itself, or is it the climber's rigid idea of reaching that one exact, unchanging spot? Maybe the focus shouldn't just be on finding a final endpoint, but more on the climb itself. What's your take?
That shift feels really crucial. So for our dancer, waiting for the absolute perfect move might mean she never starts dancing at all, but just flailing around randomly could feel, well, pointless too. How do you navigate that?
I think the key is finding that balance. It's about actively engaging with the uncertainty, shaping it through deliberate, maybe small actions. But at the same time, staying open, staying receptive to the unpredictable nature of it all. It's this really delicate dance between exerting some control and being willing to surrender to how things unfold. Does that idea of balance resonate with how you think about personal growth?
It really does. It captures that tension we often feel, right? Between needing some direction but also wanting the freedom to explore. So if this whole search for our place isn't just about what's out there, but also this internal perception thing, what can we practically do to handle it better?
Well, it starts, I think, with becoming more aware of what we sometimes call the field. That's like the whole picture of our experience, both the conscious stuff and the unconscious influences, the past stuff, the future hopes, everything.
Okay.
The search for place isn't only about scanning the horizon for the next job or opportunity, it's fundamentally about engaging with our own inner landscape. Because that inner world profoundly shapes how we even see the external possibilities.
Right.
So instead of just looking out for the perfect path, we also need to look in at our patterns, our unfinished business, the ways we habitually frame things.
Huh.
What does that phrase internal landscape bring up for you?
It definitely suggests we have a more active role in shaping what we even consider possible. And this connects back to closure, doesn't it? We said our minds crave it. How does that fit into this internal landscape idea?
Getting a sense of psychological closure, maybe not a final ending, but a feeling of resolution or integration is really important. This links to a principle called pragnance.
Pragnance.
Yeah, it basically describes our mind's natural tendency toward simplicity, order, and completeness, like seeing shapes in clouds. So when we're faced with just too many options or conflicting feelings, our minds automatically try to simplify, to create a coherent picture somehow. Have you noticed that in yourself?
Oh, totally. My brain is always trying to connect the dots, find the pattern, sometimes even when it's not really there. So, for someone like Alex, the artist, how might that drive for simplicity manifest?
Well, for Alex, it could involve reframing his reluctance to commit.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not just indecisiveness. Maybe it's also expressing a deep need for freedom, for exploration.
Seeing it differently.
Exactly. It's about finding a way to integrate those seemingly opposing desires. Commitment versus freedom, rather than seeing them as enemies. And that act of reframing, just changing the story, can be incredibly powerful, can't it?
It really can. It shifts everything. You also mentioned insight earlier, that aha moment. How does that sudden flash of understanding fit into navigating uncertainty?
Insight is exactly that, the aha,
Mm.
the sudden light bulb moment where things just click. From this perspective, it's a perceptual shift. A new figure suddenly pops out from the ground in a way that makes what was confusing seem suddenly obvious.
Okay.
And it's not usually random. It often follows a principle called isomorphism, which suggests this deep link between our internal state and our external actions.
Yeah.
How we see ourselves and the situation directly shapes how we act,
Right.
and our actions feed back into how we see things. Have you had those moments, that sudden clarity?
Yeah. Those times when something you've been wrestling with just suddenly makes sense. It feels like your brain just rewired itself.
Precisely. It's like our dancer again. She was initially still, maybe overwhelmed. But then she starts experimenting. Small movements, tentative steps. How does that action start to change her experience of the white space?
Well, it sounds like those small actions start to define the space around her. A step forward creates a front, a turn creates a side. The ground itself starts to get shape based on how she interacts with it.
Exactly right. The void isn't infinite and shapeless anymore. Her actions are creating structure, creating meaning where there wasn't any before. It's that shift from paralysis to a dynamic process of exploration.
Right.
And this really highlights the Gestalt emphasis on wholeness. Each movement isn't separate. It contributes to her entire relationship with the space. Just like our small choices weave together into the bigger pattern of our lives, whether we realize it or not, like every brushstroke adding up to the final painting.
So even the smallest step can start creating that sense of direction, of purpose. And this feels connected to the idea of emergence, too.
Yes, absolutely. Meaning isn't something fixed you discover. It emerges dynamically from how all these different pieces interact. The dancer can't know exactly how her dance will change the space beforehand, just like we can't always predict exactly how our choices will play out.
Uh-huh.
Unpredictability isn't a bug, it's often a feature. The really deep insights, the breakthroughs, often come from that spontaneous engagement with what's unknown, not from sticking rigidly to a 5-year plan. Actually, we heard about someone named Maya who got into writing, and her story really shows this emergence idea. What was her experience?
Tell us about Maya.
Well, Maya started her writing career with a very, very structured plan, like daily word counts, strict outlines, the works. But she hit a massive wall writer's block. Couldn't feel authentic in her writing at all.
Been there.
Right. So, out of frustration, she just scrapped the schedule, decided to just write freely, whatever came out, no judgment, no expectations. And this unstructured approach unexpectedly just opened the floodgates. She started exploring themes and styles she'd never even thought of.
Oh.
So, by letting go of that tight grip on the figure, her specific goals, her methods, she allowed new possibilities to emerge naturally from the ground of her deeper creative drive.
Mhm.
What does her story suggest to you?
It's a huge reminder that sometimes forcing it, taking the most direct path, isn't actually the way forward. Letting go can open things up.
Precisely. Trusting that process of emergence, recognizing that clarity often comes not from wrestling a solution into existence, but from creating the space for it to just appear. It sounds like maybe growth isn't about getting to a final place, but more about this constant negotiation, this back and forth between what we're focusing on now and that whole field of other possibilities around us. Would you agree?
I would, yeah. It feels like a dance, like you said, between having an intention and just allowing things to happen. And this idea of the infinite horizon, even as the dancer carves out her space, the void is still huge. What does that tell us about our own journeys?
It suggests, maybe paradoxically, that the more we define our path, the more we actually become aware of just how vast the possibilities still are. Creation doesn't shrink the world. In a way, it expands it. The search for our place isn't about arriving somewhere final. It's about continuously co-creating with that field of possibilities. And this co-creation idea, that connects to field theory, right? How does that fit in?
Remind us quickly about field theory.
Field theory basically sees reality as dynamic. It's constantly being shaped by all the different forces interacting within our perceptual field, our thoughts, feelings, actions, the environment. Everything influences everything else.
Okay.
So our actions, even our thoughts, send ripples out, subtly changing the context for what comes next.
Okay.
The place we are isn't fixed. It's always being redefined by the figures we focus on and the grounds we cultivate. We also heard about Elena, a scientist. Her story seems to show this dynamic quality of place. What happened with her?
Right, Elena. She'd spent years focused on finding a specific medical cure, really dedicated. But as she got close to her goal, she had this realization. Her real passion wasn't just solving that problem, it was broader fostering innovation, helping scientists connect and collaborate.
Exactly. And the trigger for this realization was apparently seeing some kids playing, creatively building things out of junk. It happened when she stepped outside her intense research focus, that very defined figure she'd been working on for years.
So something totally unrelated.
Totally unrelated from the ground of her wider experience, became a new figure, and it shifted her whole perspective on where her true purpose might lie. So by shifting focus, allowing this unexpected new figure to emerge, she found a deeper purpose that actually integrated her science background, but took it in a new direction. Does her story spark any thoughts for you?
It really drives home how being open to stuff that seems off topic can lead to these huge shifts. But this whole journey, this growth and discovery, it definitely involves some discomfort, doesn't it? Stepping into the unknown is rarely cozy.
Absolutely. There's always that tension, isn't there, between our need for some structure, some predictability, and that equally real urge to explore, to discover something new. The more we grow, the more we bump up against the unfamiliar. And yeah, that can feel unsettling. And this is where I think authenticity comes in. How does that connect?
Authenticity. Like being true to yourself.
Yeah.
Acting in line with your values.
Precisely. And from certain philosophical angles, authenticity is about embracing both the freedom and the responsibility we have to create meaning in a world that doesn't just hand it to us.
Right.
In our terms today, it's about trying to align our actions,
Yeah.
the figures we choose to bring forth, with the deeper currents of who we are, our desires, our fears, the whole ground of our being. So living authentically often means being willing to be vulnerable, yeah? To face that discomfort of the unknown as we make these choices. What are your thoughts on that link?
It makes sense. Real growth probably does involve getting out of the comfort zone, even when it feels shaky. Now, we talked about the mind needing closure, but also the danger of getting stuck, getting stagnant. How do we strike a balance there?
Finding that dynamic equilibrium, I think that's the goal. Balancing the need for structure, for intention, with the ability to be spontaneous, to be open. It reflects a principle called contact. Really fully engaging with what's happening right now, without either desperately clinging to it or defensively pushing it away.
Okay.
It's about developing this fluid, responsive way of being with whatever the field of possibilities presents. Which brings us back maybe one last time to our dancer. As she gets more confident, she's not trying to dominate the void anymore. Right? She's entering into more of a partnership with it. What does that look like, that collaboration?
It sounds like she's moving with more freedom, more trust, like she's having a conversation with the space itself.
Exactly. Her dance becomes this ongoing dialogue, this interaction between her inner world and the environment she's shaping. And through that deep engagement, she finds this sense of belonging. Not because she found one perfect spot and stopped, but because she's tuned in. She's flowing with the rhythms of it all.
Yeah.
And that dance, it's never really over, is it?
No.
New possibilities keep emerging. What's the figure today? might just become part of the ground tomorrow as we keep evolving. It's this continuous spiraling process.
It really feels like the journey is the destination then. So maybe in the end, the search for our place isn't about finding all the answers. Maybe it's more about learning to ask better questions as we go. What kind of questions would those be?
Questions like, how am I actively co-creating my experience right now? How can I better notice and honor the figures that are trying to emerge in my life? And how do I find the courage to just keep exploring that infinite horizon, especially when it feels uncertain or unclear?
So, wrapping up this deep dive, the big takeaway feels like this: that feeling lost or overwhelmed by choice, it isn't necessarily a sign you're doing something wrong. It could actually be a really potent starting point for engaging actively with your life, discovering things.
Precisely. It's shifting from the pressure of finding a fixed point to embracing the ongoing, dynamic dance of creating and becoming.
And maybe a final thought to leave everyone with. Perhaps the real measure of growth isn't the specific places we end up finding, but how we learn to transform the spaces we inhabit inside and out along the way. Something to reflect on, perhaps, about your own dance with the unknown.
Indeed. It's always unfolding.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this gives you some new ways to think about navigating your own possibilities.